I mean, I'm a big believer that the game can be free from discrimination. It won't be happening next week. It won't happen in 2 years. Probably won't even happen in my generation. Chipping away, keep chipping away that stone. Soon it will happen.
Welcome to a special conversation with Kick It Out about governance. It's Black History Month, and one of the key things about Black History Month is it's not about always speaking about the struggle and negativity. It's about highlighting some amazing things that are happening. Today, I'm with three very powerful and influential people that are doing some amazing work in governance, really pushing the game forward. But not only that, they're making sure that this game can be a better place. What about the people that are not on the playing field, that are dealing with the cases and things that we've been talking about, that are ultimately in positions of power to move the game forward? I have three of them today. We're going to speak about their journeys, we're going to speak about things they work on. I'm going to continue to talk about how the game can move into the direction we want it to. Start with the big dog that's hosting us.
So my role is actually the chief executive. So main responsibilities are to work with the board to ensure that we function properly and look after the game in Cheshire.
So Alex, regional manager, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm a qualified solicitor by trade. So prior to joining the FA, I was about 5 years qualified in dispute resolution, and then moved to a county FA, doing discipline within Leicestershire County FA. And then the role of regional discipline manager came up, and I applied and was fortunate to get it.
So, done my degree, worked part-time. I think I was in a bookies for about 3 years, but it was sports related. So I was a manager at a bookies alongside my degree. And after my degree, I applied to work at Spurs, my local team. So I was in the events team there. And then I met my missus in Liverpool, not too far from here, and moved to Essex. Got a job at the Essex FA, now an investigations officer at the Essex FA.
As I mentioned, there's so many black players on the football pitch, but within our roles, media, investigations, governance in general, this is probably a period where we see each other, wow, in those roles or spaces, there's not a lot of us. Why do you think that is?
Some of my thoughts are around, there's a little bit around tradition. It's traditionally not necessarily seen as an exciting part of the industry, but actually there's some great recognition now to the fact that actually the game it does need to be governed, and it needs to be governed ethically, and it needs to be governed in a way that brings new people and attracts people into football, whether it be playing, whether it be administration, whether it be refereeing. And also, we've still got these challenges around gatekeepers and around how people engage with organisations such as county FAs or football clubs or even governing bodies. When they apply, do they feel that they're being listened to? Do they understand the job specs? Are there people they can speak to give them encouragement? And this is why it's important that we have people from different backgrounds, different faiths, different religions, different beliefs in governance, because the game should be for everybody.
Yeah, for me, it stands out a lot, because I remember, I'm sure you guys all remember, a few years ago when Danny Rose was going through a few different things. Yeah. And he mentioned about coaching, and he said, why would I want to be a coach? If a professional can feel like that, how much more someone that hasn't been in the professional remit that wants to be a coach? And that's coaching. And then I look at that and I feel like, is that the same sentiment that happens for positions outside the field of play? Ultimately, we know that the UK is predominantly white. That is seen in football as well. And as I mentioned, you're all in influential positions where you sit in rooms where you can make change. Do you find that a position of pressure?
Yeah, definitely. But it's good pressure. Mm-hmm. There needs to be someone to rely on, I suppose. Like seeing Alex, being introduced to Alex at such a senior role at the FA brought me comfort. I felt like I had some degree of trust with Alex straight away. And obviously I deal with grassroots clubs. Some clubs got obviously black officials, black players. When they're submitting statements or they're bringing in a complaint to me, some players might not even feel the need to raise the complaint because they feel it won't go anywhere. But seeing me in my position, they might feel more comfortable to do so. And that is pressure, because I feel like I owe them something now. whether the allegation's true or not, do it properly to the best of my ability. And having Alex there who oversees serious cases, like I said, any serious case that I get at county level gets obviously confirmed by Alex, or my recommendation gets confirmed by Alex. And hopefully we can do the best job we can for the minorities, yeah. So yeah, it's important.
How about you, Steve? Because you are CEO. That in itself is, powerful magnitude. Through your journey and where you are now, do you, especially with, you mentioned you've mentored people going into the industry, do you feel a sense of pressure that you have to make sure that your role is everything and more, so that more people can follow your path and go further beyond?
Yeah, I think, yeah, so I would genuinely own up to, I think some forms of pressure are good. It creates diamonds, and so somebody once said that to me, and it's a great analogy. I think that what I've got is the right sort of pressure. The real pressure comes from within. It's intrinsic to me. I just want to try and be the best that I can be. Yeah. And whilst it's a bit cliched, it's actually true. I think you just want to be the best version of yourself. We've all talked about that today, for example. We want to be authentic, want to be ourselves. But do you know what the real pressure comes? Just do a great job and to make this the best county FA possible and to serve the grassroots football community. And I think if you can also add that extra layer of making sure that people who don't feel they fully belong, but helping them feel they belong, is even better. Because we know what our audience is, and we know the demographics of the counties, so we know what we're working with. And the vast majority of people we work with are great, and so it gives us a chance to educate, to inspire, and it gives us a chance to really say, look, you can see it, you can be it, but also, we want you, whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your background, we want you to know that there's two things. One, the game belongs to everybody, and two, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can be part of this game. Whether it's a CEO, whether it's a regional manager, whether it's working at a county FA and doing great things, you can be part of that. Because football does belong to everybody, but we also know some people feel they don't quite fit. So the pressure comes from just doing a great job. And you know what? There's a real skill in listening. There's a real skill in listening to what is actually being said, what's going on, and challenging some of the norms and challenging some of the behaviours that I think some people think are acceptable. Alex talks about education. Some people still say and do things not to offend. They just don't know any better. My job is to help people know better. And Maya Angelou said, when you know better, do better.
100%. And on that education piece, how important in general is that in governance? Because one thing I have seen or understood so much recently is you can have as many campaigns as you want. You can, do as many sort of actions, but unless you're trying to re-educate from grassroots, nothing is ever going to change. And sometimes I look at football, you've got the top of the pyramid, you've got the bottom of the pyramid. Grassroots is such an integral part because that is the lifeline of what football is. How important through all of your roles is that education piece of making sure that you go to people and say, okay, this is what we need to be doing, or this is what we need to be saying?
What do we want for our young people? What do we want for society? We want people to be educated. We want them to have this foundation of knowledge and good morals and understanding right from wrong. Education is key. And some of the education, Alex, is tough, isn't it? Because there's some people that are hurt by, we have change. We have our Bristol bus boycott moments. We have our Rosa Parks moments where we think, did it really take this to make change? But Alex, we do still have those moments.
We still have those moments, 1,000%, even at Grassroots. Still, this last week I had a moment where it impacted me quite significantly that I didn't realise a 9-year-old would know what the KKK was. And it hit me so hard that this 9-year-old did know what the KKK, used it in the right perspective. Again, it's frightening that a 9-year-old did know that, because I thought, bear in mind my daughter's 4, so I thought the new generation would understand better, but again, we still need to hit home in those communities that might not understand the impact of your words, and the impact of your actions. So my daughter, for example, I use her again, she goes to predominantly 98% white school. I'm educating the the school that she can have her hair in braids. And little things like that, regardless of football. So if we're still educating in those aspects of life, football's got a massive impact to have.
100%. And that is a perfect segue into a conversation about allyship, because ultimately, as I mentioned, all three of you do an amazing job. You do so well to impact community, especially within football. But as we've seen as well in recent times with the reports of social media, etc., there is still issues with racism within our game. We can't get away from that. What we have seen though, whether it's players, coaches, Gareth Southgate coming out, Henderson, there's so many people named, is that people realising that this is not a black problem, it's not a minority problem, it's everyone's problem. How important is that allyship piece? Because from the way I look at it, if everyone is saying something and it hits 10 people each time, there's a multiplier effect. But not saying anything and watching it go on, you're just kind of letting the situation brew. So as you mentioned, you know, going to your daughter's school and telling them about it. How important is that? Is it to have people that understand the mission that you're trying to create within the FA, or for you county FA, or for you county FA?
Like I said before, with Alex in place at the FA, having someone that understands where I'm coming from, that the majority might not, it's reassuring. It's reassuring because as a minority, feeling uncomfortable isn't new to us. Every walk of life you'll feel uncomfortable. Like I said, my partner's from the Wirral. I can walk into a restaurant with her and instantly I'm noticing I'm the odd one out. Having a familiar face, like I said, Tajon at Kick It Out, it's really reassuring and it's positive. And collaborating with like-minded people, having like-minded people in their positions, it brings strength and unity. Yeah.
How about your perspective, Alex? Like, you know, when you work on these cases and like you said, you're having to educate people on why something may be offensive. How important is it having the buy-in from allies that understand, okay, well, we need to do more, we need to keep pushing forward?
I think it's massive because you can't just become stagnant. You have to keep driving forward. Like, I mean, I'm a big believer the game can be free from discrimination. Big believer it can be. It won't be happening next week. It won't happen in 2 years. Probably won't even happen in my generation, my lifetime. It might happen in my daughter's or my daughter's daughter or so on and so forth. It can happen, but it's all about sort of chipping away, keep chipping away that stone, and soon it will happen.
The Black Lives Matter movement really made me notice that because it was new with George Floyd, and at that time during COVID, we had a lot of tweets, all lives matter, all lives matter. I was liaising with Alex a lot about it, and I wasn't keen on charging or fining anybody or banning anybody. Education, like you say, was essential at that point, and just making people understand in future. And obviously this won't be the last movement or the last pandemic. But yeah, education and having people in place that will help move things forward.
How do we move to a place where we can have more people within positions of influence, like yourselves?
So from me, I was thinking about this on the way up. Is Cairo's already mentioned it. I'm influencing Cairo in terms of he can probably see a pathway to go to where I am at the moment. I'm now looking at Steve and thinking I could potentially come. I never even thought about becoming a CEO. Steve gets a job as a CEO and thinking, might become a CEO. And it's that domino effect of seeing someone breaking down boundaries, being in a position, a role, and moving forward that way. I think it's so imperative and important that we've got role models, and I want to keep inspiring the next generation. So it might not even be Cara, it might be someone else. And keep inspiring people to be in these positions, in other positions, and to make your family, your friends proud of what you're doing.
Definitely, I think so. Even like we were saying before, at Sky Sports, you've got Micah Richards. BBC, you've got Ian Wright. BT Sport, you've got Rio Ferdinand. Role models are everywhere, and you always need someone to look up to, I think. Following their footsteps, I know that things are possible with the right application.
Bit of a personal question for all of you. Do you understand the importance of your own individual journeys in relation to being role models? Because sometimes I feel like, especially as black people, as you mentioned, the saying of working twice as hard as your counterpart and everything, it's almost like you have to keep going and going and going and going. And as I mentioned at the top, sometimes we have to stop and celebrate what's happened. Like you mentioned, this is a big CEO, you're working at FA, you have done great things and implement change. Do you all actually understand the importance of your journeys and what you've done, or have time to reflect on that at all?
No.
Times like this, you do.
I think I was going to say, I think times like this you do. I'll just straight up no. I don't think I've ever reflected until again the journey up when I spoke to my brother on the way up, and he said, no, you've had a real impact. What you've done to one qualify as a solicitor through adversity, to then get a role at the FA and be quite successful in what you're doing, to stand back and smell the coffee. It's that analogy, isn't it, in terms of, no, we don't have a moment. Steve's probably never had a moment of reflection. He's probably reflecting now as I'm talking. And it's kind of, because we're constantly working hard to be the best, like Steve's already said, the best version of ourselves. So we don't actually take that moment to reflect. My journey, having to work part-time to do my LPC legal practice course, to then become a qualified solicitor, but not back in terms of training contracts, and then to get the role at the FA and be, I don't think I would have got the role if I wasn't a solicitor. And I'm just going to leave that bomb there, and I'm not saying anyone else that I work with is a solicitor, because they're not. So I don't think I would have got that role personally. I might be completely wrong. I might have built up good relationships in the interview. However, I don't think I would have done. And that's a real powerful thing to think about, and probably shouldn't think like that. However, that could be the position.
No, 100%. How about you, Steve? Because again, like 20 years of solid work has led to this moment.
Yeah, Alex is right. We don't always get time to pause and reflect. I think a moment for me last year, something I'm very proud of, was being on the blacklist, and I have to say that kind of derailed me both emotionally and physically for a couple of days, because I was so proud, and that meant quite a lot to me actually, because it's from my peers and it's from people that I really admire, and the past 10 years I've been heavily influenced by Dr. Colin King and Butch Fazal, and I really have benefited from the support from Kick It Out as an organisation, both support and advice and helping us fight some of the fights we've got to have, but also because they're just so positive and they're so always there, and I think that's really important. And I feel supported today by Cairo and by Alex and by the people in the room, but I also feel that there's still lots of work to do. Again, it's such a cliche, but there's still so much to do, and I'm excited about that as well. The ultimate measure is have things improved for my children, some of the young people coming through today? Yeah, they have, but there's still work to be done. And I think the danger with pause and reflection is making sure you don't forget there's still plenty to do. But it's lovely to come together every now and again and meet fellow practitioners and fellow black excellence practitioners like yourself representing. And let's be honest, these days we turn on the TV and we do expect to see our community represented, and it's great to see female representation, and it's great to see that broad spectrum of different people. And also, let's not forget about cognitive diversity, because we've got some great allies in the white community who get it and talk about it and advocate for us 100%. When we're not in the room. That's important as well.
100%. What you're speaking on now is perfect, because you're right, there is so much to do. But as I mentioned to all three of you, I think it is important to celebrate the successes and actually discuss that, people are making some great strides. And you're all role models, you're all connected in some way. But what I want to talk about now is, how do we get that next generation of leader? Yeah. What pathways do we create for them? What gems do you have from what you've seen that can be very influential for that person that might be watching this and that never ever thought of a career in governance, or never ever thought that they could have a career in football if it wasn't related to playing? How do we make sure that there are more Cairos, Alexes and Steves, and that we can actually make a real difference, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch? Because ultimately, I always give the analogy that people want to be the person in front of the camera, But the person that dictates what happens is the director who's never on the camera. The person that has the money is the person behind the camera. And it's about how do we make people realize that that is a cool thing and a place of influence to be.
Great question.
Yeah, I was going to say, fantastic question. So from my perspective, relationships are key, connections are key, communication is key. So if you were to ask, if I was at university and you spoke to me at university, I probably never spoke to you.
Mm.
However, I've realised to get where I need to get to, I need to build connections, I need to network, I need to be the best person in front of the camera, off the camera. I need to continue building relationships even when it's been 4 years since I spoke to Steve, but I still speak to him, and so on and so forth. And I think for the new generation, it's being open, being transparent. Don't be afraid to speak the truth if it's there to be spoken. However, also don't be afraid to also potentially adapt to then grow.
How about you guys?
I agree. I think networking is a big one. Networking, things like this, if they happen more regularly, we've got the Equality Impact Group that Tejan invited me to. She involves stakeholders in football, from professors to ex-players, obviously county staff, and we meet up, I think, about every 6 weeks, and just discuss how we can better practices in discrimination, how we can improve, and just how do I put it to the FA. So, for example, we had a team walk off, a youth team, walk off the pitch because they were discriminated against. They got charged because they walked off the pitch, banned in the game, but they're saying that they were discriminated against. Yeah. Now if that happens, the club will still get the charge, but if the other team are found proven of the discrimination, that charge now gets dropped. Things like that. And if other young players coming up, my son sees, if I'm playing football now and I can discriminate, I can speak up, and something will happen, and it's important for these practices to be put in place. But networking is massive, I think.
One thing I want to ask you, Steve, not just because of your role, but because of the vast experience you've had, and ultimately we're speaking about governance, but people are naturally going to have conversations in their everyday day-to life or football in general. How do you navigate having difficult conversations when they need to be had?
Yeah, it's. I think difficult conversations. I think there's probably 2 or 3 key things for me around difficult conversations. It's how we frame them. So, is it difficult or is it going to be inspirational? I always think about start with the end in mind. And I think in governance, what I've learned is the power of influence and the power of messaging. So when we perhaps take a step back from this conversation that we might need to have, where I need to see change or I need to see a better behaviour. Take a step back first and go, right, so how might I better understand A, why it's not quite working, and B, what's a really good way or an example of how I can help this situation change organically. And so a lot of my role is influencing by suggesting good ideas. There's a thing called interest convergence, where how do we get it's like an 80-20 rule. If 20% of a group have a particular interest, but 80% of a group of the whole 100%, if only 20% have got a real emotional vested interest in something, we need interest convergence. So how do we sell the benefits of inclusion? How do we sell the benefits of having more female? How do we sell the benefits of intersectionality? Well, I tell you what we do. We actually get the 20% to start influencing 80%, saying, look what happens when we're more diverse. Look what happens when you open up your recruitment process to younger, talented, older, talented, but different people. Look how your business flourishes with a much better range. If we go to some of the brilliant cities we've got, we should be recruiting. What Birmingham you know, any business, football club in Manchester, Birmingham, London, Leicester, they should be recruiting, you know, what their community looks like. And I know people are working hard to do that. So we need to recognise that English isn't always people's first language, it's a second language. We also recognise we've got low social economic groups. We've got that, I saw this American footballer talking to Oprah Winfrey, and it was quite powerful what he said in terms of influence. He said, you can be black in America, and he said, and that's okay, and you'll get by. And he said, you can be poor in America, and he said, and that's okay, and you'll get by. He said, but when those two come together, he said, now you've got a problem. And I took that away, and I thought, well, that intersectionality, Alex Gary, that actually, we see that in football. There are black, Asian boys and girls who want to play football, but they come from a difficult background and they haven't got the money. So actually, they're never going to get football. So the way to help out in governance, have we got friendly policies? Have we got real positive interventions that make football free to access? Have we got, I've got some boots and trainers that have been donated. They're in my office now, I'll show you them later. How do we, you know, do the Robin Hood bit? And how do we take that and give it to people who need it? And how do we make sure prices for hiring facilities, this is part of governance, are affordable, and how we don't drive people away at peak times? How it's things like that. We've done some initiatives here where some local boys and girls want to play football at half term. So just come on and play. If you've got a quid, then great. If you haven't, then that shouldn't be stopping you. But some of these things start at board, they start at NGB conversations, and making sure we're having that conversation. And what the advice I give to everybody is advice I give to myself. If ever you find yourself in a majority and a majority discussion, stop and think about the minority, because that is so important. Because not everybody can actually afford or access what we take for granted. We all think everybody's got a smartphone and you can just tap in and log on to. No, that's not true. Not everybody has, and not everybody has got Wi-Fi. And some young boys and girls we know, they're getting second jobs and they work to help mum and dad. Their culture says we send money back home. Yeah, so they haven't got a choice to come and join us in football. We need to make it really, really easy. Starts with governance, because you need to have friendly policies. You need to have work towards the Equality Awards. We need to be accountable, both internally and externally. We need Kick It Out. We need other organisations to come and say, it would really help if you did this. And we need to be transparent as well. That's key, Alex, being transparent, isn't it? Putting our hands up and saying, no, we're not actually sure we know all the answers here, or we might have got this wrong. Asking people to help us. We need to be aware that both internally and externally, people need education on what it feels like to maybe not be feeling you belong. And how do we make people feel belong? A protected characteristic is age. So we shouldn't discriminate against young people. We shouldn't discriminate against old people as well. I deal with some older people who struggle with technology. So what we do sometimes is we bring them in and help them fill out forms. It's one of the best examples. Walking football is one of the best examples of a positive intervention for older men and women to get active and to feel they belong. Yeah? But it needs the support of the board and the council. It needs the support of everybody to say, we're going to really provide walking football. We might provide that, you know, we might provide that to get people involved free. So important, and it starts with, you know, inclusion starts with I, and the governance starts with I as well. I need to make sure that I do everything I can within my power, ethically.
What I love about that is it just highlights the reality of where we are in this, just in the world, right? Where ultimately, if you're so caught up in you, sometimes you can't see what's around you. And that's why this conversation here is so important, because people will be listening to this now and they're thinking, well, I know a lot about my lived experience. I want to offer insight that can help shape the game to be where it needs to be. Because sometimes it's not out of malice. If you're just not in the room, or people are not aware of everyone's needs, it's then harder to facilitate what needs to be done. We talk about a lot of the time when we say football has been so white, pale and stealth for so long. When you have a woman come in and say that this is what the game needs. The small things like, oh, okay, we need to wear black shorts instead of white shorts. People then go, oh, I didn't realise that. It's not my lived experience. So for people that may be watching this and thinking to themselves, I want to make a change. I want to speak about my lived experience. I want to use football to help my community. What is one key lesson, and I'll go around through your career so far, that you would say would be very important for them to help on that governance journey? Because what I'm hoping is, through what everyone said here, people can look at themselves, look at you and say, I want to be able to help change. I want to be able to make sure that when things are discussed about my community, that I can be in the room. I want to be able to make sure that football within my community serves everyone within my community. So what is one gem that you've seen in your career that might be a key nugget for someone to take away?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think it probably, I was reflecting as you were talking there, so I'll go all the way back to Grassroots when I was a volunteer and impacting, stopping someone bringing a knife to a training session and saying there's better things that you could be doing, you can do X, Y, and Z, and impacting that way. Now I'm obviously impacting the wider community and the national perspective. So the one gem I've taken away is never stop giving back to your community, even if it's as a football coach, even if it's a volunteer, if you have a massive impact on someone's life and don't even realise the impact. I read a review yesterday because I'm a coach at an academy, and I didn't realise what impact I had on this player until I read his review, and he said, Alex mentioned such and such and such, and it's made me a better player. Wow, I've had an impact on that one person's life. So what I'm trying to say is volunteer, change someone's life by volunteering, potentially. That's your starting point. And then once you get to better roles, potentially, inverted commas, then you can have a wider impact on the general community.
Yeah, I would say my gem would be, it's okay to feel uncomfortable, and you can thrive from uncomfortability. Like I said, from a young age I was involved in football. When I got to the age of 16 and I was a scholar, I was living away from home in digs, and I didn't want to be away from my mum. My mum cooks good food, and I was missing home. But it was for a better cause. It was for a good cause. Went to uni. I didn't really want to go to uni, but I knew what the end goal was. So I've been in rooms at work now. I'm the only person of colour in the office. I'm uncomfortable with it. I wasn't uncomfortable with it. I was wary of it. But it's positive, and I'd say always, when you've got someone in, like I said with Alex, always look for role models, because there's role models everywhere, and they're not decreasing, they're going to increase. And hopefully things like this will happen more often, so that young kids growing up can look at us and say, it's possible. So I'd say it's fine to be uncomfortable. If anything, you should be uncomfortable.
Yes, being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
I had a coach that used to say that all the time. Get comfortable being comfortable.
So when you walk into a room, you're not uncomfortable. You straight away.
If you're comfortable, you're not progressing really.
100%.
From a governance perspective, and from my time more recently as a CEO, I think the one thing I've taken away is you don't know always what you don't know, and I've learnt so much. And I've knew so little about some of the things that really need to happen to make sure the game's free of discrimination, make sure it's a game for all. And I've really reconnected with, actually, I didn't know that. And also, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. It's knowing who to speak to and taking that learning experience. And you know, it's great. Before somebody again said to me, Steve, before you pull a fence down, always remember why it was put up, and before you put a fence up, always remember what are you trying to keep people in, or stop people getting to you. I've learnt so much, and I didn't realise I knew so little. And in governance, I think that's really powerful, because the more I've learnt, the more I've been able to influence, and the more I've been able to understand and make positive change and have some positive interventions. But without being in this role, Alex Carroll, without being in this role, I wouldn't have been able to have done that.
No.
I just wouldn't.
No.
And that's one of the key takeaways for me, thinking, actually, we've made a difference.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
As I've mentioned to all three of you, I appreciate all of you on a personal level, because the link between all three of you is literally what it should be, not just in football and society. You mentor Alex, you guys work close to each other, you can see the path that's going there. And for anyone that's watching this, just know that within football, you have the ability to create change in so many different ways. As Alex mentioned, even if it's within your local community coaching, there's so many things that you can do and you don't know who's watching. There is power in you being yourself and knowing that you can create change. So once again, I want to thank all of you for the work you're doing, for the influence you're having, for the influence you have in the rooms. Don't stop, keep pushing. And hopefully, if you're listening to this conversation, your influence to maybe take a career in governance or maybe see what's happening in your regional county FA. But remember, there are places for you to get involved in football and use your power to do great things. There's playing, of course, there's coaching, of course, but there's so many ways you can get involved to make sure that football can be a game for everyone. And on that note, this has been Kick It Out, a conversation on governance. Alex, Cairo, Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Make sure you check out some more content that will be coming soon.